I feel like it should go without saying, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. Every draft grade for these teams should really be incomplete. We just don't know yet. And we're not going to know in 6 months. We're not going to know in a year. We're not going to know in 3 years, probably. It takes a long time to see if these players will actually develop, and we just don't know. So what a draft grades video is just really an excuse to talk about the players. For the guys in and around the league that, okay, draft grades are stupid, I'm inclined to agree with you. We just don't know how good these players are going to be yet. It's an excuse to talk about these players and kind of answer the question for the casual fan of, did my team do well in the draft or not? Yeah, the answer is ultimately we don't know, but it's a fun exercise to talk about some of these players and, fill in the general public. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know more than these teams on what they should have done in the NFL draft. Again, it's just an excuse to talk about these players and say, hey, I think you did a pretty good job based on projected draft slot and value, and whether you appear to have gotten a pretty good haul or not in relation to the rest of the league. But we really won't know for some time. We'll start here with the Arizona Cardinals. I am going to give them an A+. I really like their draft, and I really liked a lot of teams' drafts. This was a draft that we heard a lot about during the process, that it wasn't nearly as good as we've seen in recent years. And while I can certainly agree with that sentiment, I still feel like there was a lot of value down the board, and I really like a ton of these scheme fits and some of these players that were available in the late rounds. I could see John Gaines being a steal from UCLA, a sub 4.47 3-cone, which is kind of that mark that you look for, and kind of one of those tests that you can really see a player developing because it really translates to in-game action for an interior offensive lineman. Got to have those movement skills, and we see some of the elite movers that have gone way down the board in drafts past that have become stars in the league. Like Jason Kelce is a phenomenal example. Now, is John Gaines going to be Jason Kelce because he ran a 4.31 3-cone? Yeah, not necessarily, obviously. And he's a guard too, so it's not a one-for-one comparison. But a lot of those guys that meet that threshold end up being pretty good players, so there is something to it. Not all, but it is a pretty decent metric. We'll start at the top with Paris Johnson Jr. The Cardinals drafted at number 3 overall, traded down to 12, getting the Texans' first-round pick in 2024 as a result. And while people expect the Texans to take a step up, I really don't know that they're going to take a massive step up. You can look at the schedule and say, hey, we've got an easier path to victory compared to 2022, and it really wasn't so bad. However, at the same time, the roster is still developing. You look at the Texans, you don't really see a team that is fully put together and complete. There are very few teams that are, if any. The Eagles obviously would be one of those teams at the top of the list. But another team, too, is the Chiefs. The Chiefs look so good top to bottom. And those were the two teams that played in the Super Bowl last year. But that Texans pick could easily be a top 10 pick in 2024. Easily. And the Cardinals, I don't really expect a ton out of in 2023. So I could also see them having a very, very high pick in the draft. And you can kind of start to think about, okay, if we pick at number 1 or number 2, in a quarterback class that features Caleb Williams and Drake May, we could certainly end up getting a haul for moving down in the draft for a team moving up for one of those players. But then you move back up for Paris Johnson at 6, maybe the best pure offensive tackle in the class just based on a size and athleticism profile, good feet, still developing as a player, but has a little bit of versatility to him as well, has a history of playing guard at Ohio State as well. B.J. Ojulari at number 41. I really, really liked Ojulari. I know he didn't test really well. I think he was injured during the process. But he was someone who, when I watched him, I saw a pretty advanced pass rush plan compared to a lot of the other edge rushers in this class. He was somebody that, okay, if the first move doesn't work, he's got counters he can go to get to the quarterback. High-effort player. And I like him at 41. I think he's a better athlete than the testing showed, even if not an elite one. It doesn't have elite size. Garrett Williams. Going into the cycle was somebody that I could have seen going in the first round. Big injury, knocks him down here to 72. I don't really know that we saw him at all in 2022, but was pretty good in 2021. And you might be getting a steal here at 72 as far as it looks. Yeah, the medicals are a question mark, but I really like Garrett Williams. And I think for a team that desperately needed corner help, Garrett Williams is a high upside player, even if you don't see it right away. Michael Wilson is kind of another one of those guys with a potential injury red flag. Ends up going at number 94. But if he's able to stay healthy, this is a very good player. Dominated at the Senior Bowl. Could be a potential 3-level separator. Translates or projects as maybe a true X. He's got the size. I think he has the movement skills. He's going to be someone that if he stays healthy, puts it all together, I could really, really see him being very good. Clayton Tune is a gamer. You know, I like him at 139. Put some really gutsy performances out there, just like Jake Haener. The UTSA game was a really fun one to watch live, and he is surprisingly mobile. You know, you think, you know, Clayton Tune, probably not one of the guys that's going to lead all quarterbacks in this class in rushing yards, but there he is, near the or at the top. So he's interesting at the very least as a backup option. Owen Pappoe is a really good athlete, linebacker from Auburn. Keitrell Clark was somebody I loved. I could see maybe not an instant slot starter, but a future starting nickel corner in the league. Really like Keitrell Clark. And then Dante Stills, a little bit undersized, maybe a bit of a tweener, or certainly, but really like his upside as a pass rusher. And at 213, that's pretty tremendous value. They took some risks in this class, for sure, but I really like their haul overall. And they got the Texans 2024 first next year. Pretty good. If you couldn't already tell, this is in alphabetical order based on city, by the way. Atlanta Falcons at number 2. I wish you wouldn't skip around, but if you've already done it, probably. So it's alphabetical order. If you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, they're not going to be the first 10 minutes of the video. I can tell you that for free. But the Atlanta Falcons are one of these teams that don't really seem too concerned with how, you know, the league and the media and the general public values these positions nowadays. We see running back go later and later and later, and it being devalued and devalued and devalued. But they got one of the best players in the draft at number 8. I don't mind taking a running back in the first round, depending on the situation. I think Steelers fans think I hate them because I didn't love the Najee Harris pick, even though I liked the player. Bijan Robinson and even Jahmyr Gibbs to an extent, it's a different scenario. Falcons have one of the better offensive lines in the league in place. I know they were very effective running the football last year with Tyler Algier, and all credit to him. He's not Bijan Robinson. That's kind of what this comes down to. 5th-year option with a running back is super important. I don't know if you extend them, right? Because then you worry about, you know, the tread on the tires. Are they going to be effective in that second contract? Is it going to be worth it for you? That's the question. But getting a running back for 5 years of their prime and what projects to be one of the better ones in the league immediately, I don't hate it at 8, even if it seems early for a running back. I know I'm going to be called a hypocrite. You can't compare Najee Harris being drafted to run behind borderline NFL rosterable offensive linemen to Bijan Robinson, who is a much better prospect running behind a much better offensive line. It is a different situation, especially with Desmond Ridder. It's not bad to have somebody that can really take the weight off for a team that loves to run the football, and for Arthur Smith, who had a ton of success with Derrick Henry just handing him the ball every single play in Tennessee. So I don't hate Bijan as much as everyone else seems to at this spot. I know it's a running back at 8. I like it for the team. I don't care what you think. Matthew Bergeron at 38. There was a thought that maybe he could go inside the first round as we got closer and closer and closer to draft night on Thursday. They're going to play him at guard, probably. That's what it seems to be. Maybe a starter at left guard sooner rather than later. You have Chris Lindstrom on the other side. I don't expect you're going to play him as a backup right guard right away. You want him to be a starter if you're taking him at number 38. Does that happen immediately? Tough to say. Zach Harrison, somebody that was a hyped up recruit, didn't ever really end up becoming what everyone thought he might at Ohio State. Although I think he got better and better and better every year. Really big dude, has the length that teams love at the position, and I think could end up being at least a 2-down player for you. I'm not sure if the pass rush is ever really going to come on, but there's a chance it does, obviously. So he's got some decent upside. Clark Phillips, I really, really like, and I think profiles to be a starting nickel corner sooner rather than later. Tremendous instincts and ball skills. He's undersized. That's why he goes at 113 as opposed to in the first round. If he was 6 foot, he's a first-round pick probably. Just that good of a player, but undersized, probably nickel only. Teams don't really seem to value that. I really like what the Baltimore Ravens were able to do in the draft as well. The Ravens came in and they didn't really plug positions of need the way, you know, you'd expect a lot of teams to draft. They kind of just went with the best player available approach, and I think that is the approach that yields the most long-term success. Zay Flowers at 22, is a pretty good value. There was thought that maybe he could go at number 11 to Tennessee. He might even be the first receiver off the board. But nope, is the third receiver, goes behind JSN, goes behind Quentin Johnston. I like Zay Flowers, potential 3-level separator. I think could really be effective in the slot, but I think could play on the outside. He's got a great release package and a really, really good feel for coverage. Effortlessly finds the blind spots of defenders, able to hide, and then boom, at the top of the route, cut it off, get open, make a play. Big time speed, really like Zay Flowers. Now, I really wished that they were going to take a cornerback high, just because it was such a big need for them. But they got Ki Blue Kelly in the 5th round. He was another Senior Bowl standout. Thought he did a really good job. I could see him earning playing time sooner rather than later with that cornerback room as it is. Trenton Simpson at 86 feels like a steal. Really, really good athlete. Plays so well playing downhill, sideline to sideline range. I project a future starter at will. I think he's your Patrick Queen replacement, if you want to go ahead and think about it that way. And then Andrew Voorhees probably goes earlier than the 7th round if he didn't tear his ACL at the combine, and still dominated at the bench press with a torn ACL. So a competitor for sure, and someone that could have gone as early as probably day 2 if he was completely healthy. Falls to 229, not too bad. And I really like what the Bills were able to accomplish as well. You have a team that needed more weapons on offense. Everyone kind of pegged them for a receiver at some point, and they did get one, just not a wide receiver. Dalton Kincaid from Utah was the pick. They traded up in front of Dallas to get him, and you have to like how he fits into the offense. Dawson Knox can stay at Y, and Dalton Kincaid can be the move tight end. You can run him out of the backfield. Well, not like as a runner, but you can start with him in the backfield, H-back. You can put him in the slot, I think. He's just a really good receiver overall. Will not drop the football, and you wanted more weapons for Josh Allen. It doesn't have to be a traditional wide receiver for him to be successful, and you can really see him fitting into the offense as a big slot, or yeah, your traditional, we'll call it a move tight end, right? Very, very good player, and maybe falls to 25 because of an injury designation, but like the pick at 25. You can immediately see him fitting into the offense. Osiris Torrance at 59 represents tremendous value. Could have seen him going night 1. Plug-and-play starter at right guard, in my opinion. Dorian Williams is a really good athlete, playmaker for that 2-lane defense. And then they took some chances down the board on some good athletes. Justin Shorter, Alex Austin. Nick Broker has experience starting at multiple spots in the offensive line at Ole Miss. Yep, just overall pretty good haul, and I think they got a couple of starters right away. Going to give the Carolina Panthers an A- because I really don't think they overthought it. I think back-to-back pretty good drafts were Scott Fitterer and company. Obviously, new head coach in there with Frank Reich. And I think they moved up to 1, obviously traded a lot to get Bryce Young, but I think they got the best quarterback in the draft. Bryce Young is a playmaker. Might worry about the size a little bit, but in a league now that really, really protects these quarterbacks, and somebody as shifty as Bryce Young, he's able to stay out of harm's way and make plays. He's not afraid to take hits, but he usually doesn't have to because of his pocket presence and, I would say, an ability to get out of trouble, extend the play, and make plays. Didn't get enough help at Alabama this past season. I think he's going to be better with a trio of NFL receivers around him, and I'll even include Shi Smith in that, who it looks like they're going to keep in the slot. He might drop balls the same way the Alabama receivers did, but you really like the addition of Jonathan Mingo into this offense, and the Panthers are going to have a couple of receivers that are going to be tough to match up with. Yes, this draft was great for getting size at cornerback. Had a ton of really, really big athletic corners enter the league this year, but it's going to still be tough for teams to match up with Terrace Marshall and Jonathan Mingo, who, again, could also be a 3-level separator, represents a possibility as a true X receiver. Go up and get it. Good route runner for his size, and really, really solid hands. Mingo was someone who kept ascending throughout the draft process, ends up going top 40. I don't hate it. DJ Johnson's a little bit older, but is a really, really good athlete. We saw, a year ago, the Panthers really emphasized getting those fantastic athletes. I think they've done it again. Chandler Zavala in the 4th, I think, is, again, awesome value. Presents a future potential starter on the interior of the offensive line. At the very least, a swing guard right away. And then Jamie Robinson at 145 goes higher in the draft if he tested better. Plays football at a high level, though, so does he really need to be an unbelievable tester? At 145, it makes sense. And somebody that's going to contribute, at least on special teams, could rotate in and, dime packages, maybe even working in the nickel. Chicago Bears were, I don't even want to say disappointing in 2022, but they weren't good. Fact. They were picking number 1 for a reason. Kind of fell into that pick with the Texans converting that 2-point conversion. Hail Mary. Attempt to even get into that position at the the final seconds of week 18. But the Bears did well. They moved down from 1 to 9, getting a haul in the process, including DJ Moore. We'll factor that in slightly. And then just drafted some really solid players with an emphasis on upside and athleticism. I think that's pretty obvious with the case of Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens, both former top recruits. Pickens especially was very highly rated. Tyreek Stevenson, another guy with a good offseason, had a great Senior Bowl, has the size, length, speed profile, again, that's really, really coveted. And then Darnell Wright at number 10. Their first pick, they moved down from number 9, swapped with the Eagles, who moved up for Jalen Carter, of course. And Darnell Wright just really seemed to be the best right tackle in this draft. Everyone mentions how he handled Will Anderson, who, went at number 3 in this draft for a reason. Darnell Wright looked very, very good this past season. Good athlete as well. And really, a question I have is how is that going to translate to the league when he played in such a weird offense? And I know it's not like the wide splits of the air raid offense, RIP Mike Leach, but it still is a little bit unusual in the fact that, Hendon Hooker would often just sit in the gun, boom, throw the ball downfield. It's going to be a different offense in Chicago entirely, very run-focused, of course. And we'll see if there's any transition. We'll see. Or there will be a transition. We'll see if there are any growing pains along the way. You expect for a young offensive tackle, there will be. But not bad at number 10. Roschon Johnson, huge fan of him. If he was a starting running back somewhere, you could have seen him going a lot higher than this. Good receiving ability out of the backfield. Team leader at Texas. And just tough, strong. Fights through contact. Fights for every yard. Love Roschon Johnson. Nice 1-2 punch with Khalil Herbert. Tyler Scott, I loved at 133. Burner at Cincinnati. Another potential 3-level separator. Just got to kind of evolve as a route runner a little bit. But tremendous speed, and I think can win on the outside despite his strength. Or despite his size, I should say. Noah Sewell was someone who was really hyped up early in the process, but I don't want to call him a one-trick pony, but still developing as a 3-down linebacker, we'll say, but a thumper moving downhill for sure. Maybe a little bit limited athletically. Terrell Smith out of Minnesota, really, really good athlete. Like him at 165, and just a really overall solid draft from the Bears, and you gotta love moving down and getting a haul in the draft both this year, next year, and DJ Moore. The Bengals had a fun offseason. They signed a huge contract to someone that really has been up and down at left tackle in Orlando Brown Jr., probably better as a right tackle. And Jackson Carman did a good job for them, but you didn't pay him all that money to play right tackle for you. So Jackson Carman maybe with an opportunity to start on that right side. Lyle Collins was a little bit of a disappointment. But I think the Bengals had a pretty good draft. I love DJ Turner at number 60. Really, really good athlete. Ran unbelievably quickly and taped pretty good as well. I think there are times where he looks a little bit out of place, but has incredible makeup speed, as you'd expect, and I think is usually pretty sticky in man coverage. Shows that he can stay in phase, keep up with receivers, obviously. Myles Murphy at 28, I think is also a really, really high upside pick. Murphy was somebody who, if you look back at 2021, you could have seen him going a lot higher than 28th in the draft. 2022 was a little bit lacking. Still developing a pass rush plan. We talked about BJ Ojulari earlier with an advanced plan. Myles Murphy, not all the way there yet. And then Jordan Battle, I don't really see it all the way with him. But I do think he's a good player. But, Daniel Jeremiah said that he was going to be a potential starter for the Bengals right away on that strong side. So that's pretty high praise for Jordan Battle. Charlie Jones was ultra productive, transferred to Purdue, and can really, really run Deep threat, like him at 131. I'm not going to say think Alec Pierce, but there are similar vibes there. Chase Brown, workhorse at Illinois, put up some really good numbers. Andre Yosivas, excuse me, flyer. Probable gunner right away, I would expect, but can really, really run. Deep threat for Joe Burrow to hit downfield. And yeah, I think with his size, speed, athleticism profile, gunner is going to be somewhere where he can shine. You have to factor in where some of these teams are picking. Not everyone's going to be able to get a top 5 talent because you might not have a top 5 pick. You might not have a top 32 pick. You might not have a top 60 pick. And the Cleveland Browns were one of those teams where their first pick was at number 74. Yes, you did have a pick in the second round, but you traded it to get Elijah Moore. And I am fully on board with that. Big Elijah Moore fan. He had a very different type of receiver at 74. Big body. Again, one of these guys that projects as an X receiver, fights for yards, and really, really good hands. Injuries, maybe a bit of a concern with Cedric Tillman, but really like the player. Siaki Ika is really just a nose tackle right now. I'm not sure if the Browns have a more advanced plan for him. A lot of Danny Shelton comparisons going out there. I think he's probably just a nose tackle for right now. We'll see if that ends up becoming more. DeJuan Jones, big dude. Dominated at the Senior Bowl. Pretty good tape at Ohio State. Just super, super big. One of the largest humans I've ever seen. Super long arms. Tough to beat as a pass protector for that reason alone. Isaiah McGuire at 126 was someone I could have seen going earlier than this. I really like him as a rotational player for the Browns. Potentially earn more time as well. And then DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I love at 140. He is someone that is raw, still developing as a quarterback, but got better every single year at UCLA. Ultimate competitor. Love him at 140. It's at worst a nice insurance policy if something happens to your starter. And Luke Whippler at 190. Love that. Cameron Mitchell, by the way, fun fact, is that he's best friends with Greg Newsome, who you guys will know if you're a Browns fan, of course. But Luke Whippler, also Northwestern corner, of course. Luke Whippler at 190. It seemed like he should have gone a little bit earlier than this. I'm not saying he was someone that should have been gone day 2 necessarily, but you could have seen it. But at 190, you know, at the start or middle of the 6th round, take a shot. Potential backup center for you. Could earn playing time, but injuries happen across the offensive line. You got to be prepared, and I think this was a move of preparation rather than just waiting and not having an option. I would say I'm a little bit more bullish on the Cowboys draft compared to a lot of others that I've seen. I thought they did a pretty decent job. They addressed some needs. I'm not sure if they really went with best player available, but I think they got some pretty good players. So it's tough to say a team did a bad job when they got some good players I could see, you know, playing sooner rather than later for them. The interior of their defensive line is just not great. Mozzie Smith is a tremendous athlete and somebody I could see getting on the field really, really soon. He's a fantastic run stopper, and he has the athleticism to become a better pass rusher. Luke Schoonmaker is old, so maybe you feel like it's a little bit early to take a tight end that's 24, 25 years old. But Luke Schoonmaker is good. Big body, former quarterback. Will Levis beat him out for the starting job in Connecticut high school football, which is kind of a fun fact. Ends up going to Michigan, playing tight end, and being a very, very good player. And, you know, does pick 58 seem a little bit early for him? It was a really talented tight end class. They were kind of flying off the board. If you prefer Schoonmaker to Tucker Kraft, why not at 58? Cowboys fans the entire draft cycle told me we don't need a tight end over and over and over again. But you definitely could have taken one. Peyton Hendershot's fine. Jake Ferguson's fine. Luke Schoonmaker could be the best of the bunch. And then DeMarvion Overshown is a fantastic fit for the Dan Quinn defense. He's not going to be an every down player probably, but he is someone that is like a hybrid safety linebacker that has been a very effective spy for Texas. Got to throw up the horns, of course. I think he's a good player. Number 90, I think, is fine for him. And then, you know, maybe the most fun pick of the entire draft. Asim Richards, I like too, by the way. But Deuce Vaughn, you know, the storyline there is remarkable. His dad is a scout for the Dallas Cowboys. Deuce Vaughn, you know, underappreciated and doubted his entire life because of his size. He's only about 5'5" as a running back, but tore it up at Kansas State. Was a dominant force for the Wildcats. Super happy to see him drafted. There are a bunch of really fun clips of him being drafted in the reaction in the Cowboys war room, which, I've never seen Star Wars, but it seems like, that Darth Vader, like secret base empire type of thing with the Cowboys. I don't like the vibes in there. But Deuce Vaughn, really, really fun storyline and a good player. This is somebody that you could see earning playing time soon, especially with the Tony Pollard injury. Running back is one of those positions that gets banged up. You always have to have a stockpile full of running backs because you'll never know when you might need one. And Deuce Vaughn at 212, you could see him, I don't know if he's going to get more than 50 touches as a rookie, if that, but I think he's going to make the most of his touches when they come. The Broncos, like the Browns, were another team that went out, traded for a quarterback, and because of that, they really didn't have many high picks in this draft. No first-round pick, obviously. Seattle making the most of that, taking Devin Witherspoon. But the Broncos, I thought, got some really good players. Receivers kind of been one of these positions that they keep going after. KJ Hamler really, I don't think has been as good as they've wanted him to be. Hasn't really earned enough playing time. And there's so many rumors swirling around Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton getting traded constantly. The Broncos have said, we're not trading them. Stop asking. But they continue to swirl. I don't know why. But they get a receiver at 63. And Marvin Mims is good. Like Marvin Mims. Former pretty highly touted recruit. And when you focus on, some of the better slot receivers in this draft, Marvin Mims comes up pretty quickly. And I think you could see a path to playing time for him really early as a result. Yeah, Jerry Jeudy is someone that could also be pretty effective in the slot, but has the route running ability to play on the boundary. Courtland Sutton, obviously an outside receiver. Marvin Mims, I think, is a nice complementary option, at least in that receiver rotation. Drew Sanders at 67, I loved. Former top recruit, edge player out of Alabama, 5-star, and transferred to Arkansas, was in between Texas and Arkansas, chose Arkansas, and I honestly think he made the right decision because they used him in such a way where he was able to truly break out and become a draftable player, really live up to that 5-star billing. I could have seen him going a lot earlier than this. A unique combination of size, speed, and I would say off-ball and on-ball skills. He was sometimes used as a blitzer and was really effective in those roles. And I think both off the edge and through the middle, by the way. He, kind of just shoots gaps and makes plays. The missed tackle rate is concerning. But when you have everything else that Drew Sanders has, including, a knack to play in coverage at times, I think developing him as a tackler is the least of your concerns. I think you're going to be able to do that. Riley Moss at 83. We got to say, he's a white corner. Haven't had many of those in recent years. And really good ball skills. Really good player. I like him at 83. I don't think it's too early. J.L. Skinner in the 6th would be going a lot earlier than this, I think, if not for injury. He was someone who tore his pec, I want to say, somewhat deep into this draft process. But big time safety and emphasis on big. He's like a linebacker back there at times. Best playing downhill. Good closing speed. Never really going to be a deep over-the-top guy, but you don't have to have him there. You got Justin Simmons. He's a nice complementary piece in that secondary, and he is a huge, huge safety. Hybrid linebacker almost, I can say. Lions have been heavily criticized over the weekend. They had an interesting Thursday night. They took Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. He was the second running back off the board following Bijan at 8. And I think there was a slightly bigger gap than that in terms of where you'd expect those guys to go. Jack Campbell was in the pick at 18. The next linebacker was Drew Sanders, who went off the board, I believe, at 67, as we just showed. They really just didn't care about the positional value that we see nowadays. They took guys they liked. And honestly, I don't hate it. When you reorder these picks to where we thought these guys might go pre-draft, let's say Brian Branch goes at 12 or 18, right? Let's say Jahmyr Gibbs then goes at 18 or 34. Maybe it's Sam Laporta at 18 in a stacked tight end class, although it seems a little bit early, right? The point is, I think they got really, really good players that are going to be impact playmakers right away. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is probably the best running back in that room right now. Just as a complete player. I like David Montgomery. You gave him a lot of money. I think they would have been better served just keeping Jamal Williams and then drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, and you don't have to pay David Montgomery all that money. But you did. It's fine. You got a good player. Jahmyr Gibbs has home run speed, electricity as a runner, but also is a tremendous receiver. I've said that he led Alabama in receiving yards about 1 billion times last year, but he was such a good player, and I think he's great. I really, really like Jahmyr Gibbs. You worry about the size with him, only about 200 pounds, 5'11 or so, but I really, really like him. And I've said it, I don't hate taking a running back in the first round with that fifth-year option. The second contract's the big, issue at times, but I like Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think, you know what? If you told me they got the combination of Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, and Branch, I'd be like, that's a pretty good haul. If it went Branch, Campbell, Gibbs, Laporta, who's complaining? Nobody. They got him. That's the important part. Jack Campbell was maybe the best linebacker in the draft. 6'5", 250, fantastic athlete, fantastic instincts, can play off the ball, better than most linebackers in this class. Really, really good player. Sam Laporta at 34, elusive, good hands, was not given an opportunity to shine in that Iowa offense with Spencer Petras at quarterback. It was a disaster. But Laporta, I think, has the upside, size, athleticism to be a really, really good player. And at 34, starting tight end, really good tight end class. I'm on board with it. Brian Branch was one of my favorite players in the entire draft. Top 15 player for me. I recognize nickel corner is not highly valued, even though I think it should be, because so many teams run basically base 3 wide receiver sets. You need someone like Brian Branch that's able to cover those slot monsters like Cooper Kupp and like Jerry Jeudy or Justin Jefferson we talked about earlier. Jefferson, I know, can play on the outside, but has been used as a mismatch in the slot. You need a guy like Brian Branch that can help, ease that pain of watching Justin Jefferson, dominate. And he certainly has at times, as you guys will know. Really like the player. He's definitely very good in coverage, but I think he's his best working downhill, playing in that overhang role, and finding the ball. Instincts are phenomenal with him. I didn't love Hendon Hooker at 68, but the value I can certainly recognize was there. It was just if you weren't going to take a quarterback high, you might as well build around Jared Goff completely. I guess the value was kind of too good to pass on at 68. It really, I can't hate on it. Broderick Martin is a nose tackle. Aleem McNeil, I think, is going to be, the 3 tech moving forward because Levi Onwuzurike just cannot stay healthy, unfortunately. So Broderick Martin is a starting nose tackle down the line, and Aleem McNeil is a solid option at 3 tech. Antoine Green's a good athlete down the board. Track background, can really run, has some size as well. So not a bad option if you're going to lose Jameson Williams for 6 games. Maybe Antoine Green fills in. I don't know how much he plays or if he even makes a team, but it's encouraging. And I thought the Packers really crushed this draft. They did a really, really good job, in my opinion. They're not a team that takes receivers early. They just don't. They take those more valuable positions, and you just hope they can actually develop them. And when you look at Lucas Van Ness, you see, first of all, listed at linebacker, you see somebody that maybe will play in that Preston Smith role. Rashawn Gary is your anchor on the outside. That's the guy. He's not going anywhere. But Lucas Van Ness on the other side, get him on a runway, it is a problem for offensive linemen. Speed to power is the name of the game with Lucas Van Ness. Really, really like him. And I think he's someone that can also play on the interior as well, depending on the down and distance, of course, in the package. But I really, really like Lucas Van Ness. I like the value at 13. I don't think it's too early. He was a rotational player for Iowa, yes, but when he was on the field, he was clearly and obviously their best player. Luke Musgrave at 42 was someone you could have seen maybe sneak into the first round. Injury problem in 2022, or big injury, but really phenomenal athlete. Tested well, of course, to back that up at the combine. Good hands and a vertical threat for this offense. And their tight end room was disastrous. Their best tight end was Josiah DeGuara heading into 2023. That's a problem. No disrespect to Josiah DeGuara, but I guess it is, I guess. You had to improve, at least get some more guys in there. Maybe DeGuara ends up being a stud, but hasn't happened up to this point. Jaden Reed at 50. Undersized receiver with really good route running ability, quickness, and speed. Good hands, at least developing hands. That was a question of mine in 2021. I go, I don't really think he's a consistent catcher of the football. 2022 eased some of those concerns for sure. If you don't understand the Tucker Kraft pick because they took a tight end at 42, again, I don't think you understand what the Packers like to do on offense or the quality of player in the tight end room coming into the draft. Tucker Kraft was one of my favorite players in the draft. Loved his value. Saw him just dominate Montana State in their, I believe it was a championship game in 2021. Very, very good player. Very good athlete. And of course, in 12 personnel, you're going to have a field day with Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Those guys can really run, and they can also block as well, especially Tucker Kraft. I really, really like this combination of tight ends. Musgrave is the better athlete. Kraft, I think, is maybe the more complete player, or well-rounded, I think is what I'm going to settle on, because I did like Luke Musgrave quite a bit as well. Colby Wooden, it's surprising to see him listed as a linebacker. He was somebody that I consider to be like a hybrid defensive tackle, defensive end. And in the Packers system, I see him as a defensive end, but I guess drafted as a linebacker. So they view him in the same vein as Rashawn Gary, as Lucas Van Ness, etc. So he's a good player, though. Sean Clifford at 149, I really didn't get. You know, everyone says great guy, great leader. Comes in, works hard, but I just didn't really like the player too much. Dontavian Wicks, I think, was better in 2021 than 2022, and has showed the ability to make contested catches. Really, really like Dontavian Wicks at 159. Good athlete, too. I think 2021 was a better year for him than 2022 was, so I can see the value at 159. Carl Brooks at 179, again, also see the value. Also listed at linebacker. I don't see it. I simply do not see him as a linebacker at all. He's like 300 pounds, was an inside-outside player for Bowling Green, and was someone that had a pretty good Senior Bowl as well. Kind of put himself on the map to a lot more people, and I don't see a linebacker. Something might be bugged with some of these players because they're not linebackers. All right, just went back and watched the drafting of both Wooden and Brooks. Both announced as defensive tackles. So something's bugged on the website. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. But they're not nose tackles, so don't confuse that. Anders Carlson, they got a kicker. His numbers weren't great. I don't scout kickers, but the numbers weren't like phenomenal. He did get drafted, brother of Daniel Carlson, I believe, and maybe you got something there. Maybe you like the profile, the leg strength. Harrington Valentine was a player I really, really liked. Deep sleeper for me. At 232, I thought he would go a lot earlier than this. I think potential starter in the nickel as well. And I think at 232, it seems crazy to say that of a 7th round pick, but I think he can develop into being that type of a player. Lou Nichols is fun, a tank for Central Michigan. There's a funny clip on Twitter of me saying, you know, looking at the running back that were still available. I'm like, yo, Lou Nichols is going to be a great UDFA pickup. Boom! Packers drafted him at that moment, and it popped up on the screen. Kind of funny, but I do like Lou Nichols quite a bit. And then Anthony Johnson, good value at 242. Thought he maybe could have gone as early as round 4. And decent athlete. I think good instincts and tackling ability as well. Grant Dubose was another guy who had a pretty good offseason, Senior Bowl guy, and you know, why not at 256? Texans made the shock of the draft, taking C.J. Stroud at number 2. I don't mind the pick, obviously. I think he is certainly worthy of going at that spot. It was just, you know, widely reported that it was going to be either Will Anderson Jr. or it was going to be Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. And they end up taking C.J. Stroud at 2 and then moving up to 3 to take Will Anderson and deprived us of back-to-back Alabama players at the top of the draft. But very, very interesting draft for Houston. Starting quarterback at 2, and then you traded up. The only thing I don't like is you traded your own first-round pick and not Cleveland's in 2023, or for the 2024 draft. You're betting on yourself, which I like. Their schedule, you could see them getting quite a few wins. And maybe they just think the Browns are going to be worse than they are in 2023. I don't hate the bet on yourself. You definitely got more talent in the room starting quarterback, plus Will Anderson Jr. Juice Scruggs, you could see starting at center. I know he was a big Brett Coleman guy that Brett really, really loved. Good athlete as well. So that's your starting center at 62. Tank Dell, you can see earning time in the slot right away. Really good athlete, really quick, really fun. I think return upside, of course, as well. Dylan Horton came on really, really strong as a pass rusher in the college football playoff. Big reason TCU was able to even make that national championship game. Henry To'oTo'o, I think, at 167 is, again, really, really awesome value. Is one of the better linebackers in this draft. I had him right outside of that first four, which featured guys that I thought were pretty close, and Drew Sanders, Jack Campbell, Dion Henley, and Trenton Simpson. To'oTo'o was in that next tier, and they got him at 167, and I definitely like him. Patterson's good depth on the offensive line. Xavier Hutchinson is someone that was ultra productive at Iowa State. Good route runner. You know, you worry if he's going to be consistent enough, but at 205, you know, why not? Chris Ballard goes into the draft with a strategy of get better athletes, if that's even possible. They go based off the relative athletic score from @MathBomb Kent Lee Platt, who does a tremendous job with that. And I mean, it basically seems like the Colts draft best athlete available with every pick. And that's what they did. Anthony Richardson might be the most athletic quarterback of all time. Height, weight, speed, freak, big time arm. And I think it'd be a great fit in the Shane Steichen offense that came from Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. Julius Brents, another phenomenal athlete. Picked up a lot of steam as we got through this draft process. Had a great Senior Bowl. And I think really cemented himself in the one-on-ones as a top, 75 pick. Ends up going at 44. Like it for them. Cornerback was pretty weak for them. Josh Downs at 79 was one of my favorite picks of the draft. Slot starter right away. Great hands. Not sure if it's going to translate quite the same as he showed in college, but contested catch ability seemed to be pretty good, but doesn't really do a fantastic job going outside of his frame. Just a smaller guy, but he's going to be a slot monster for Indianapolis. Great route runner. Really solid player. And then they was just athletes for days. Blake Freeland, you can see him becoming a potential starter. Great athlete. Adetomiwa Adebawore, great athlete. Offers inside-outside flexibility. I think he's a 3-tech. He's got, he tested about as crazy as I've ever seen anybody, regardless of position. Unreal what Adebawore was able to do. Workout warrior in the combine. Got him at 110. I don't know if he dropped because of medicals or what. Maybe they just view him as a tweener. But at 110, the upside is there. Darius Rush. Size, speed, freak. Didn't quite play so fast when I watched him. Was a little bit disappointed, but you could definitely see him developing into being a freak. Daniel Scott, like Darius Rush, was another Senior Bowl standout. I mean, how many Senior Bowl guys are on this list? A lot. Daniel Scott, instincts. Really, really liked watching him at Cal. I thought he could have gone earlier than this, but round 5 seems about right. Will Mallory, another good athlete. They are all good athletes down the board. Jake Witt has barely even played tackle at the college level. I think started out as a tight end. Ended up changing to tackle. I think 13 games was the number. Phenomenal athlete. Worth a flyer at number 236. I mean, it's just athlete after athlete after athlete for the Colts. The Jags definitely had an interesting draft. I don't know if they felt handcuffed by the Cam Robinson suspension and felt like they needed to take a tackle high in the draft, but I think they got a pretty good one. Anton Harrison is one of the better pure pass-protecting left tackles in this draft. Movement skills are very good overall, and you traded down multiple times to get him. Traded down one spot with the Giants to 25 and then back to 27 where you ended up taking Harrison. Really like him. I think he's a future starter at left tackle for Jacksonville. Brenton Strange. It was strange to see him go ahead of somebody like Darnell Washington, but the medicals seemed to be a lot cleaner with Brenton Strange, and he was somebody I liked. Was surprised to see him go quite that early, though. Tank Bigsby, another guy I liked quite a bit. He truly is a tank at running back, but I think with his jump cuts, he offers a little bit of juice as well. I think he's definitely pretty quick. Yasir Abdullah was a draft crush for a lot of us in the Draft Nick community, but someone that was ultra productive at Louisville off the edge. I think he's a hybrid linebacker that can rush, can drop back into coverage, and can earn playing time, of course, but I think is going to be a special teams impact playmaker for you as well. Antonio Johnson, I was really surprised to see him make it to 160. His 2021 tape was, in my opinion, really, really good. Someone that played in the slot pretty well, but good movement skills, effective downhill, plays high effort. I like Antonio Johnson. I can understand kind of souring after 2022 wasn't phenomenal, but I really like his upside. Parker Washington at 185. Consistent hands, really, really good player. I knew he was probably going to go late. Slot receiver. He's not like the most dangerous weapon of all time, clearly, but I just think represents consistency, and I think is going to be a nice, fourth or fifth receiver upside on a team. And ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. But if Parker Washington was a little bit of a better athlete, goes probably a lot higher than this. And then one of the most fun picks of the draft was Derek Parrish from Houston. Ultra productive. They announced him as a fullback, and even though he was a tackle for loss machine at UH, I'm thinking it would be kind of fun to play him as like a hybrid edge fullback, the way, Patrick Ricard of the Ravens is a hybrid nose tackle fullback. This is an interesting pickup. The Chiefs are just such a talented team that it was really tough to figure out exactly what they would do in the draft. You figure they would get a receiver. You figured that they probably get a defensive end. They got both. And it was an interesting, and tackle was certainly a need for them as well. But they're pretty much top to bottom one of the most complete teams in the league. So even just outside of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, it's easy to see why this team is successful. They've done a really good job with, taking cornerbacks late. That's why Chamari Connor can end up being, a really nice option for them. Good athlete from VT. Felix Onyeudike-Uzomah, which is how you pronounce that, by the way, if you did not know. Felix Onyeudike-Uzomah, really, really productive player at Kansas State. Dominated TCU in 2021. One of my favorite games to watch over the entire draft cycle. Found him I knew him, of course, in the Big 12, but really watched him in the summer and was blown away. And I really didn't understand why he didn't get more hype over the 2023 draft process, but not surprised to see him go at 31. Thought the value was there, and you can easily see him fit as a Steve Spagnuolo guy off the edge. Rashee Rice is a great run blocker. I think it's a little bit concerning that's the first thing everybody says about Rashee Rice. Everyone says he's a fantastic contested catch receiver. I didn't really see him come away with many when I watched him. I thought the hands have been talked about like they're the best ever. Saw him drop a couple balls when I watched him. I don't know. It was a little bit weird with the Rashee Rice evaluation. I think at 55, though, you take a chance. His 2021, I think, was better than his 2022. Wanya Morris, another transfer, I think from Tennessee, right? Good athlete at 92. Maybe you develop him into a starting tackle, best case scenario. That's what you're hoping for at 92. But a backup, good depth. BJ Thompson, great athlete from Stephen F. Austin. Didn't tear up the Senior Bowl because he was at the East-West Shrine game and was really good that week as well. One of the better players there, if not the best. DeAndre Coburn, no, I'm a big fan of his. Nose tackle with a little bit of pass rush upside. Nick Jones, also from Ball State, I thought was pretty good value at 250. He was someone I've heard more about. Didn't get a chance to watch him, but he was hyped up quite a bit. So I'm going to trust my guys on that, and I think that Nick Jones at 250 is a player that you could be pretty excited about in that DB rotation. The Las Vegas Raiders. Going into the draft, you thought that corner was probably pretty high on their list. Offensive tackle if they didn't want to take a quarterback. And I didn't think they had to take a QB. You do have Jimmy Garoppolo under contract for a few years. It might just end up being a one-year contract the way it's structured, but they didn't take a QB until later. So I'm not sure they really have to do that. I think they're fine. Build around Jimmy G. We've seen that a really good roster around him. You could be successful enough if he stays healthy to compete for a Super Bowl. He started a Super Bowl. That's how I feel comfortable saying that. Tyree Wilson at 7 was a pretty solid pick. If he stays healthy, apparently there was a medical kind of like red flag on him for a lot of teams. If he stays healthy and develops, you got a really good player. Good athlete, exceptional length at the position. Michael Mayer, the picture of consistency at tight end. Fantastic hands. He's just a chain mover and a starting tight end for you right away. Byron Young from Alabama, high effort player. I think is a surprisingly good pass rusher. Not the Byron Young from Tennessee, keep in mind, but a really solid option as at least a rotational interior defensive lineman right away. Trey Tucker, he's a return man, deep threat slot player. We'll have to see what his role is going to end up being. Can't see him really getting many slot reps given who the Raiders have at receiver right now. Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers was signed. But, maybe a deep threat like Damiere Byrd and offers return value. Jacorian Bennett ran really fast. Kind of seems like an Al Davis type pick, RIP. And then Aiden O'Connell, accurate. You could see him fitting in here. If he ends up being a starter, it would not entirely shock me. So at 135, why not? Christopher Smith didn't test extremely well, if I recall, but I liked watching him. I thought Chris Smith was a really, really good player at Georgia, and a big part of why they were so effective. I know it's a safety, but he was about as effective as a safety could be. You can say a lot of that is on, the amazing front seven players that they have. And I could get behind that. I could totally see that. But I really liked him at 170. Boy, did Tom Telesco watch a lot of TCU games this year. They just drafted everyone from TCU. Their first pick was a TCU player. Their middle pick was a TCU player. Their last pick was a TCU player. And all on that offense. I will say that Darius Davis is more of a return man, I think, and a deep threat than, than an actual starting receiver option. But he offers a ton of value in the return game and could be a rotational deep threat for you. Quentin Johnston makes a lot of sense as to why the Chargers would like him. They don't typically go after these sub-6 foot receivers, and Quentin Johnston is certainly not. 6'3", 6'4", with great athleticism, great run after catch ability. You could definitely see him working into that offense. I don't think he's like Mike Williams at all. I've seen that comp. I think it's really bad. Tuli Tuipulotu, really interesting player. Has really varied a lot with his weight, but I think has really found it off the edge, slimming down. I think he's at his best. Dion Henley, hybrid safety linebacker, but I think he's a starting linebacker for you. Great cover skills, sideline to sideline. Love Dion Henley. And then, man, I think Scott Matlock was a top 150 player for Daniel Jeremiah, by the way. Did not end up watching him. But Max Duggan, inconsistent, but tough as nails. He'll do whatever it takes to win. They're worse backups to have. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid with the Rams. They were so bad this year in 2022, and they had no picks in the 2023 draft, and I'm like, damn. I can't get behind the Rams at all. And then they had this draft where I thought they just took chances on what could end up being really, really good players. A lot of high upside picks, and I think just overall a lot of picks. They ended up trading down a ton, getting a ton of different selections. But Steve Avila, they really needed help on the offensive line. Their offensive line was real bad. Steve Avila is a starter at a bunch of different positions potentially, but I quite like him sticking at guard. Byron Young, freak athlete, took him at 77. He ran in the 4.4s, but super twitched up and pretty productive at Tennessee as well. Kobe Turner, another phenomenal athlete. Tested really, really well at a wake. Tape's pretty good too. Like him at 89. I think they just kept taking good athletes with high upside. Nick Hampton fits in that. Davis Allen fits in that group, the tight end out of Clemson. Puka Nacua has good tape and was off to a good start. Senior Bowl guy that I think got injured on day one, but was looking really good otherwise. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, little LaDainian Tomlinson connection. I think he's his nephew, I'd like to say. Undersized, that's why he falls in the draft. Real small, but really tenacious. I don't think he's quite the player that Clark Phillips is, but some similar traits in there as well. Zach Evans at 215, love that. There are some question marks, maybe some character stuff with Zach Evans, but former top 5 running back recruit in his class. I think he was number 2 all-purpose back and the number 1 player in Texas. He was really hyped up and was great at TCU. Kind of joined a running back by committee offense at Ole Miss with him and Quinshon Judkins, but I think has high upside potential, RB1 for the Rams. And Desjuan Johnson, undersized interior defensive lineman. Yeah, we've seen that work with the Rams before. Great pass rusher, high effort player, undersized and short arms, maybe limits his potential. But overall, I thought the Rams just did a really good job of getting much needed talent onto this team and filling a lot of different holes on their roster. Now, I will say I don't think they're going to be great in 2023, but I do really like their draft. You know, the Dolphins had an interesting draft. Didn't really have a lot of picks, made some trades, had their first rounder forfeited. It was interesting, the 2022 season for the Dolphins as a whole heading into this draft. I don't actually hate their picks, though. They just had so few of them. Cam Smith, you could see, end up being a starter on the boundary. Xavier Howard is solid. You have Jalen Ramsey, but Jalen Ramsey's always been best as the guy that moves around wherever you need him. Maybe that's the nickel. Maybe that's shadowing the other team's best receiver. I like Cam Smith. Really physical, good athlete. Again, another tenacious guy, I would say. At 51, I can really get behind it. Devon Achane at 84 is just a perfect fit for the offense. Home run hitter. Electric speed at the position. Elijah Higgins, I think, is going to end up playing tight end for them. Got him at 197. Who knows what that transition is going to be like from receiver to tight end, if they really think they can develop him as an inline player. And then Ryan Hayes, of course, played on a great Michigan offensive line. You know, I like their draft. I don't think it was anything spectacular. They didn't really have a lot of picks to work with. But the biggest reason that this receives the grade that it does is their offensive line was a huge need and really has not been satisfied at all. Corner was a huge need for the Vikings coming into this draft. You lose Patrick Peterson. You'd bring in Byron Murphy, though, so that's a guy. However, I wish they were able to do a little bit more. I love Jordan Addison at 23. I think Mekhi Blackman could end up being a good player. I personally liked other corners on the board ahead of Mekhi Blackman, but I don't absolutely hate it. Jaquelin Roy, I could definitely see the value at 141. Jaron Hall just kind of reminds me of the Kellen Mond selection, taking an older developmental quarterback. But we'll see if he ends up developing. Maybe we'll end up starting a couple games for the Vikings at some point. That'd be a tough thing to project. But with Kirk Cousins kind of always up in the air of the will they, won't they, and you know, I don't know. Maybe it ends up happening for Hall. We've seen, you know, quarterbacks taken in this range have similar things happen to them. And then Dwayne McBride in the 7th. You needed a running back on this team with apparently no real long-term commitment to Dalvin Cook. Dwayne McBride, I like. Really, really productive at UAB. And yeah, 222 again. Like, take a shot. Why not? Now, the Patriots usually just do whatever they want in the draft. They've had some fantastic picks before. You know, Vince Wilfork was a first-round pick. Gerard Mayo was a first-round pick. And those are some, like, undervalued positions nowadays. Nose tackle and linebacker. But they've done a good job. And I think they had a good draft for sure. Christian Gonzalez was, in my mind, right up there as the best corner in this draft. And you could see him starting immediately on the boundary. Pure man corner with great movement skills, size, speed, length, everything you want a corner. Keon White, phenomenal athlete, and inside-outside versatility makes a ton of sense for the Patriots. Marte Mapu, hybrid safety linebacker, got a lot of juice late in the cycle out of Sac State. Really like Marte Mapu, had a strong Senior Bowl. Can't believe he wasn't a Combine invite. More people would know his name, but this is someone who is a playmaker, not afraid of contact. Good athlete. Like him. Chad Rylands, because of course they were going to take a kicker. Jake Andrews is good depth on the interior of that offensive line. Sidi Sow is someone who also got, and Antonio Mafi as well. Both of those guys were kind of like draft darlings on the interior offensive line for the draft Nick community. Kayshon Boutte is probably their most well-known draft pick overall. Maybe Christian Gonzalez is more well-known now. But Kayshon Boutte has the record for SEC receiving yards in a game. Pretty incredible. However, there are some major character concerns. There are some concerns about him not testing well, not having great tape in 2022. If you look at 2020, you could see a reason why he might go top 5. You know, maybe it's a bit early, but one of the first receivers off the board, certainly. To see him go at 187 based on his hype from 2 years ago is mind-blowing, but he's someone on a huge downward trajectory. You worry about the character, but going to New England, it's a pretty good landing spot. High upside guy. You know, I wonder if I'm bumping up this grade just purely what I think about Brian Brzee and A.T. Perry, but I'm doing it anyway. Brian Brzee, I think, without some family unfortunate events is what I'll say. You know, some devastating stuff. Brian Brzee and injuries held him back in 2022. I think he's a top 10 pick easily. But things didn't go his way, unfortunately. And, you know, that's just life sometimes. He slips to 29. I think ends up in a pretty good situation in New Orleans. Love Brian Brzee. He moves different. He moves like an edge at 300 plus pounds. He is someone who is not coming out of nowhere. Former top recruit. I think he could end up being a stud. And at 29, I really see the upside. Isaiah Foskey at 40, you know, compares very favorably to Marcus Davenport. You could see, at least athletically and frame-wise, you know, why the Saints might be attracted to that type of a player. Kendre Miller, really solid running back for TCU. You know, you say maybe lacking that home run speed, and then I'll show you the run versus Texas. So, you know, he's someone who I think is a jack-of-all-trades type back, consistent, like him at 71. Nick Saldiveri was another, like, draft darling. Old Dominion, you could see him at the Senior Bowl playing really, really well in that week of practices. And there was talk of him maybe sneaking into day 2. Doesn't last long, obviously, on day 3 there, first pick of round 4. But potential starter for them, I think, definitely. Jake Haener, gamer. The ultimate gamer, ultimate competitor in this class. Turn on the UCLA game. Haener fighting through adversity, throwing the ball accurately. I really like his upside at 127. And with Derek Carr, you know, you got a solid option. That's not a bad guy to learn from. I know Derek Carr is not this world beater at quarterback, but not a bad guy to learn from. And then A.T. Perry at 195. Love A.T. Perry. Rare type of route runner for his size and tested pretty well. I don't know why he went at number 195. You guys let me know down in the comments if you heard injury designations or medical red flags or something like that, but I don't know why he was here. I think he's going to end up being a starter for the Saints on the outside. And now is the time for Giants bias. I really like the Giants draft. Got one of the most athletic corners of all time, literally via RAS and Deonte Banks, and the tape is pretty good. I think he's a good press man corner, plays very physical. Decent chops in zone as well. I think he really needs to be effective. In order for him to be super effective, he's better as a press corner than playing off ball or off man. But I think he's got high upside based purely on him being one of the most athletic players of all time for the position, and the tape's pretty good. John Michael Schmitz is your starting center at 57. I didn't think he'd be available at 57. You got him at 57. I mean, how do you hate that? Jalen Hyatt at 73. You can see why he's available, but is the ultimate burner, long strider. He is the ultimate deep threat in this class and could be a potential starter in the slot long term. You know, he's a very different player from Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale is, you know, you think the guy that's going to be the long-term slot option. Who knows about Jamison Crowder and Paris Campbell and Sterling Shepard, etc. But really the two would be Wan'Dale and Jalen Hyatt. Hyatt is the burner, and Wan'Dale is the run after catch, kind of like running back, tough guy. But Hyatt, much needed injection of speed into the offense. He's like Darius Slayton with hands, is kind of what I've said. You worry if he could beat press and play on the outside and develop as a route runner because his route tree was so limited at Tennessee in that vertical option widespread Josh Heupel offense. So weird. Not translatable to the NFL. But if Jalen Hyatt develops, he could be unbelievable. Unbelievable deep ball tracker. Eric Gray at 172 was one of my favorite picks of the entire draft. I thought he would go a lot earlier than this, and you could see him being, you know, an RB1 type player, but you have Saquon Barkley, so you don't really need him to do that if you're able to extend Barkley. Trey Hawkins, I didn't know coming into the draft. Tremendous athlete via RAS. Thank you at MathBomb on Twitter. And someone that I've seen some clips on. Like, you have the Talking Giants guys. If you guys don't know them, shout out to them. Bobby tweeting out Trey Hawkins, all 22. I haven't got around to it, but you like what you see. A physical, tough player. And with the athleticism to boot, offers value on special teams and a potential long-term developmental starter, maybe. Jordan Riley is a nose tackle. I think provides limited pass rush upside. And then Jervarius Owens, I thought was pretty good value at 254. Heat-seeking missile at times. He will lay the wood coming down from that strong safety spot. And I feel pretty good about the Jets draft as well. The Jets, I think, surprised a lot of people, including myself, by taking Will McDonald, the edge from Iowa State, at 15. But his upside's pretty incredible. You know, I've talked a million times over this draft cycle about him playing in the 4i, which completely limits his upside athletically as a pass rusher, when his best game is his bend and just explosiveness off the edge. Can't really show that on the inside shade of the tackle. You got to get him outside on a runway. Now, with your edge depth right now, it's hard to see where Will McDonald's going to play. But when you factor in that Bryce Huff, going into the final year of his deal, Carl Lawson may not be on the team for too much longer. Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson could be the future of the starting edge spots, plural, for that Jets defense. I really don't mind it at 15. Joe Tippmann, starting center. Maybe sooner rather than later. Big dude, great athlete. Love his upside. Carter Warren, I think, also is really nice upside. I think Max Mitchell, 4th round tackle last year, looked pretty good when he played. I think Carter Warren could represent something similar for the Jets. Good depth at the very least. Izzy Abanikanda is a home run hitter at running back. Nice piece into that rotation. Zaire Barnes, pretty good athlete from WMU. And then Zach Kuntz, all the way down at pick number 220, is literally, via RAS, the most athletic tight end of all time. Super, super big, 6'7", 255. Really quick, really fast, really explosive. Insane. How does he go at 220? Well, still developing as a football player, as a true tight end. And for someone that's 6'7", it's going to be naturally tougher to get down and block consistently. There are some guys that can do it because they're so massive, like a Darnell Washington, exceptional blocker. But, you know, it's tougher for those longer, kind of lankier guys to be really effective in the run game, because blocking is a leverage game, and it's tougher when you're that tall and that lanky to be a very effective run blocker. The Eagles absolutely crushed this draft. They got maybe the best player in the entire thing at number 9 due to character concerns. Whatever. I mean, your team's so good you can take a swing to hit a home run with Jalen Carter. You might as well. Don't want to team up with his Georgia teammates as well. You like to think it's going to put him in a position to be successful and stay out of trouble. Nolan Smith at 30. Great value. I don't think you complain if you get him at 10 with your original pick. And you only traded a 4th to move up one spot for Carter, by the way. I don't think you complain about Nolan Smith at 10, although it maybe is a bit early for a guy coming off injury, but freak athlete, good tape. Great value at 30. Tyler Steen, you could see a path to starting at guard sooner rather than later, and that's what the Eagles could certainly use. You like Cam Jurgens for sure, but Jason Kelsey's not going to be around forever. I think Jurgens is your starting center of the future, and Tyler Steen could be the starting right guard. Sidney Brown, really good safety out of Illinois. You could make a really good argument that he was the best safety in this class. Team leader, high character guy, high performer at the Senior Bowl, brother, of course, of Chase Brown, and plays physical, really good athlete. Keely Ringo at 105, why not? Like, Ringo's more athlete than anything else right now. He sometimes just loses the ball in coverage. Sometimes it's tremendous, though. Ringo is a boom or bust type player. I think the reason he drops is due to character stuff. And that's not anything to do with Jalen Carter. It's that apparently he has 5-star syndrome, that he thinks he's the man and the work ethic is not there. And that's from Georgia, apparently giving it to, teams as they see it. And, it's kind of brutal to say of, one of your guys on your team that you want drafted high. But, they're giving it to these teams straight at Georgia. You got to respect it. But yeah, we'll see what Keely Ringo ends up doing. He can end up developing to being one of the best players at his position in the league. Has that type of upside, but maybe better suited at safety. Tanner McKee, great value at 188, one of the better quarterbacks in this class. I think right outside of that first tier of guys you could have seen going in the first round. Not that Will Levis or Hendon Hooker's on the same level as a Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or even Anthony Richardson. I think there's a drop-off, but after that, Like, I think Hendon Hooker and Tanner McKee are pretty close as prospects, and Jake Haener kind of in that same realm. You got him at 188. Moro Ojomo, defensive tackle out of Texas. He's a 3-tech, offers some pretty good pass rush ability from that spot. They just had such a phenomenal draft. We're leaving A+ on the screen for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who apparently I hate. You know, that's the type of thing I think Joe Buck has in his bio on Twitter. Like, yes, I hate your favorite team. The Steelers fans think I hate them, and I don't really know why. I just was critical of Najee Harris pick a little bit, even though I really liked him as a player. If you watched any of my draft content, I just thought he wasn't in a position to be successful, and for that reason, I didn't love the pick. However, that doesn't mean I hate the Steelers. I can be critical of a move without thinking that the team sucks or that I don't like them. I have no beef with the Steelers. I want to make that abundantly clear. And I love their draft. And they got Broderick Jones at 14, traded up. Boom. Starting left tackle of the future. Great athlete, high upside. Joey Porter Jr., so obvious once he made it out of the first round that he was the pick at 32. So obvious. Press man corner and fits in perfectly in Pittsburgh. And yeah, he might be a little bit limited, but they play a heavy press man scheme. He fits in perfectly. Keanu Benton, I loved at 49. I wouldn't have been overwhelmingly surprised to see him go in the first round. It would have been one of those like, whoa, okay, Keanu Benton's into the first round. I like the player. Was great at the Senior Bowl. Is a nose tackle, which they desperately needed, but has pass rush upside. I really like Keanu Benton. I could see why he falls a little bit, but I love him at 49. And then Darnell Washington. Apparently medical red flags drops him to 93, but unbelievable upside. 6'7", 270, a tight end that is the best run blocker of any tight end in this class, and I think is a better receiver than given credit for. Freak athlete. Round 4, pick 30, 132. Nick Herbig. Unreal. He is a really, really good edge. Really great athlete. And another brother, they have Nate Herbig currently on the team. It's incredible how the Steelers continue getting away with this crap. But Herbig at 132, like, how is he still there? I get it, he's undersized, but as a rotational pass rusher, he's going to offer a ton of juice. Going to be a fun player. Corey Trice, medical red flags apparently is what pushed him down to number 241. But again, perfect fit for the scheme, just like Joey Porter Jr. was. And you could debate they're not too far apart in terms of actual tape. And I know that sounds crazy because this name was really hyped up and this name not so much. San Francisco 49ers, another team that marched to the beat of their own drum. Even Kyle Shanahan was shocked this wasn't a running back at number 87 there. And they didn't actually draft a running back at all, which is shocking. Jair Brown was Daniel Jeremiah's number 1 safety in the class. I don't think that's too crazy. Kind of a jack-of-all-trades guy, consistent. That's good at 87. Potential starter for them sooner rather than later. Jake Moody at number 99. Listen, your team's really good already. I know there were some upgradable positions. It's number 99. Like, I don't know that you're going to be so upset about the value of taking a kicker at 99 if he ends up being anything like he was in college. He's never missed an extra point. He was drilling from 50 plus these past couple seasons at a really high rate, about half of them. And for a college kicker, that is exceedingly rare, including a kick this past year from 59. Jake Moody, I think, warrants a top 100 selection. I know it's early because it's a kicker. I get it. But if he is half the player you think he can be, you're not going to be complaining. Cameron Latu at 101. I was surprised to see him go that early, to be honest, but tight ends were kind of flying off the board. Robert Beal's a great athlete. D. Winters, same deal. Off-ball linebacker. Was really, really good for TCU down the stretch as well. Braden Willis as an H-back at 247. You could see him being a really good player in that offense. Jalen Graham, another good athlete. Ronnie Bell, I know a lot of people like from Michigan. He was somebody that earlier in the process you thought could probably end up going a lot higher than this. And maybe in an offense not too far from what Michigan runs, he could be a similarly effective player, and at least similar in the way that they are run-focused. Another team in the NFC West that marches to the beat of their own drum, it's the Seattle Seahawks, and I love their day one. Got Devin Witherspoon at number 5, you know, feisty, fiery, corner out of Illinois, plays the run better than any other corner in this class, really, and, I mean, you almost love him as a safety for that reason, but is so good near the line of scrimmage that you'd like to play him in the nickel, but I think he can stick on the boundary. He's got decent size, a little bit undersized, but really good athlete, really great tape. Devin Witherspoon going number 5. I like it. Number 20, JSN. One of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in this draft. Slot only, probably, and definitely with the Seahawks, because you have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf on the outside. He's the best wide receiver 3 you could have plugged in there. Tremendous to wait to 20 and get him when he could have gone as early as maybe number 9. Like JSN, I think at 20, good value and an instant starter in the slot for that offense. Derek Hall at 37, that was a bit early, but he fits what the Seahawks want to do. Length for the position for days, edge setter. Zach Charbonnet, I don't know why people didn't like. You know the Seahawks are gonna use multiple running backs. You know they're gonna run the ball into the ground. And Zach Charbonnet is actually a great receiver as well for the position, which is something that you can't really say of Kenneth Walker at this point in time. Really just didn't do it nearly as often as Zach Charbonnet has at UCLA. Anthony Bradford at 108, really solid value as well. Could have seen him going in the 3rd round for sure. Mike Morris is a solid rotational player, inside-outside guy. At Michigan, and Olu Oluwatimi, Outland winner for Michigan, which is best interior lineman in the in college football. Although they include tackle as interior lineman, I don't get what that means unless you're counting like a tight end as a lineman when they're playing in line, and the tackles are in between that. Anyway, I have no beef with the Outland Trophy. It's just I am slightly confused about that. Maybe some football experts could explain that to me in the comments. Not trying to be, you know, smart or fresh with that comment. I just really, I don't know why tackles could be classified as interior linemen. I think, you know, interior offensive line are on the interior of the line and the tackles are on the outside of it. I don't know. But I guess you factor in receivers play on the line as well. I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. Kenny McIntosh. Good receiving back, 3rd down option. Got him at 237. Decent athlete. Like, just an overall great draft. The Bucs have a lot of needs. And they certainly had an interesting draft for sure. Got Kalijah Kancey, who is, I would say, an immediate upgrade over Greg Gaines. Offers a lot more pass rush. Is undersized, but you know who's not is who's playing next to him at the nose in Vita Vea. So Kancey you could see being effective immediately, given one-on-ones on the interior versus guard. He's just way too fast. Cody Mauch. I like the versatility. Played tackle at North Dakota State. Could potentially and may probably play guard for you for the Tampa Bay Bucs. And, you know, you lose Shaq Mason, so maybe a plug-and-play starter at right guard. Really, really good player. Yaya Diaby offers, you know, some decent pass rush at number 82. I didn't love watching him, but, you know, I think he's not terrible value at 82. He's certainly a tremendous athlete, so the upside is absolutely there. Payne Durham had a good Senior Bowl. Trey Palmer, very productive at Nebraska, and that's saying something, and very, very good athlete. Jose Ramirez was, I think, one of the more underrated players in this entire draft. At 196, I love his upside as a rotational edge. Man, the Titans really, really needed to get a receiver in this draft. Or at least it feels like that, because there just is not a whole lot there right now. It's Treylon Burks, and then your number 2 is still Nick Westbrook-Akina. So I don't love their receiver room. Now, at 81, you feel like that's the spot where you could have grabbed one given your draft. You traded up for Will Levis. I like it. Will Levis at 33 is good value. He didn't have NFL talent for the most part around him on that 2022 team the same way that he did in 2021 with Darian Kennard at right tackle and Wan'Dale Robinson as your, you know, fun gadget receiver and slot monster you can lean on. And you don't really have that in the NFL either here. Skoronski, I don't know if they want to keep him at tackle or move him to guard. Best offensive lineman of the draft, though, probably. And then Tyjae Spears. God, he's so fun to watch. Multiple ACL tears, apparently worn down cartilage in his knees, and no ACL in one of them. That is a medical red flag that makes you wonder how he was even drafted, but I do really like the player. Maybe the knees are better than you expect, but no ACL and worn down cartilage for a running back sounds bad. I'll leave it at that. Josh Wiley, starting wide tight end for you long term. Chigakonkwo is your move tight end. Jalen Duncan, really, really great athlete at 186, as is Colton Dowell at 228. Duncan is a nice developmental option at tackle. Could potentially end up being a starter for them. Just has to develop, but great athlete. And then the last team we'll get to here is the Washington Commanders. They took Emmanuel Forbes at 16. He's a great fit for their system. Really, really instinctive corner, pick six machine. Just a nose for the football. Undersized, but doesn't really play like it. Has decent length. He's just really light, only 166 pounds. So you wonder about his durability and ability to get, to not get bodied by some of these bigger receivers he's unknowingly will be matched up against. Quan Martin, or Jartavius, but Quan Martin is an awesome nickel corner. I was surprised to see him go at 47, considering where Brian Branch went. Just 2 picks earlier, and I think Brian Branch was easily the best nickel in this class. But Quan Martin was number 2. Quan was number 2. And at 47, it's not terrible. It's just you thought Brian Branch would have been gone so much earlier. Ricky Stromberg, potential starter at center for you. I don't know about sooner rather than later, but at some point, it would not shock me to see Ricky Stromberg as a starting center for this Commanders team. Braden Daniels, I liked at 118. KJ Henry was another Senior Bowl standout. Kind of an older player for Clemson, but really a solid pass rusher with an advanced plan. And I think age and usage pushes him down to 137. I don't know if he's an every down player for you, but I like KJ Henry as a DPR. And Chris Rodriguez at 193. Solid running back, runs like a tank. And I think that, for the same reason you might like Brian Robinson, I could see why they would like Chris Rodriguez here at 193. Good value, good pick. And that is going to do it for this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. A lot of work went into this over the past year. I know you're not going to agree with all my opinions. I know draft grades are stupid, but I appreciate you watching regardless, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.